Hello everyone. Today we'll be discussing about pyrexia of unknown origin in children. Okay. So in pediatrics, UG level, very unlikely that you will get this as a long case or short case. So you won't be getting this as a long case or short case, but there is a probability of getting this as an essay question. So you should be prepared to answer this. In the next 10 minutes, I will be discussing regarding this pyrexia of unknown origin so that you will be able to write a decent essay level question even when it is asked in 15 marks for your university exams. Okay. So here we will be discussing about the definition, causes, evaluation, and management. So coming to pyrexia, so as you all know, pyrexia is another term for fever. Okay, so fever of unknown origin. Okay, so first thing you have to remember is why does fever happens? Actually, fever is nothing but elevated temperature in the body. So why does fever happens? Fever happens if there is any problem and the body wanted to raise an alarm. And what if the alarm clock suddenly beeps, but you do not know what is the purpose of this alarm clock? So what are the conditions in which such things can happen? So that is what we will discuss in pyrexia of unknown origin. Origin is prolonged unexplained fever, and it is a common diagnostic challenge in pediatrics. Okay, so you often tend to see this case, especially in tertiary and secondary care. And to identify this, you require a systematic history taking followed by examination and relevant investigation. Always remember this pyrexia of unknown origin is not a diagnosis. Okay, it is a phenomenon. Okay, so we do not know the diagnosis yet. Okay, so when do we know the diagnosis? Once we know the diagnosis, it ceases to be pyrexia of unknown origin. We will switch back to that diagnosis. The condition was first described in 1950s, okay, by the clinicians, wherein the usual cases of fever, if they are able to rule out those usual cases of fever, and they intended to identify the cause. They wanted to do it in a systematic way based on a set of based on arriving at a set of differential diagnosis made by very proper history and examination. Okay, so coming to the conditions, any fever greater than 30, any if the body temperature is greater than or equal to 38.3 degrees Celsius, and the duration is greater than or equal to 3 weeks, or in case of pediatrics, it is greater than or equal to 8 days, and no diagnosis has been made despite adequate evaluation. And this evaluation constitutes history, proper history taking, plus examination, plus investigation. Okay. So if a child is there in case of pediatrics, attended 3 outpatient visits without any proper diagnosis, or even with or without any diagnosis, but the condition still persisted. Okay, so the diagnosis could have been a wrong diagnosis, or if the child is there for 1 week as an inpatient. Okay, but yet the clinician is not able to arrive at a definitive diagnosis. So this is a key element in PUO. So definitive conditions include there should be documented fever, it should be greater than 2 weeks, and there should be no localizing focus, and baseline investigations remain inconclusive. Okay, so these are all the important things. So there are two things. One is fever with the focus and fever without focus. Most of the PUO will be fever without focus. Okay. So fever with the focus usually have localizing signs present. For example, if you got pneumonia, there will be there will be wheeze or crepitus or tachypnea. Or if you have UTI, you have burning micturition, so on and so forth. Whereas fever without focus, you do not know where the criminal lies, where the problem actually exists, but the fever actually persists. So that is where we do tend to see this fever without focus. Now coming to the causes that I have gave you are indicative causes. Okay, this is not an exact exhaustive list. Okay, so the bacterial causes usually with TB, especially extrapulmonary TB. Okay, so extrapulmonary TB, enteric fever, UTI, abscess, endocarditis. Then malaria, Kala-Azar, filariasis. Then in case of zoonosis, brucellosis, leptosis, cryptyphus, then Epstein-Barr virus, CMV, HIV, hepatitis, then histoplasmosis, candidiasis, aspergillosis. Okay. So coming to the causes of PUO, The causes of PUO can be infectious in nature, the most common cause. The second common cause include malignancy. The third most common cause could be autoimmune, and the fourth common cause could be connective tissue disorders. Okay, and there is also another possibility that despite extensive evaluation, 8 to 10% of PUO remain undiagnosed. Okay, so this is also a possibility is there. Okay, so coming to the non-infectious causes, autoimmune. Such as SLE, JAE, Kawasaki, vasculitis, or inflammatory bowel disease. Malignancies can be leukemia, lymphoma, neuroblastoma, or Wilms tumor. Again, this is indicative, not an exact exhaustive list. Okay. Then two more important things. One is drug fever. This is common. Okay. The patient might be taking drugs. Sometimes in India, they tend to take a lot of herbal drugs or drugs for some other chronic condition, which we fail to evaluate in the history. So this should be taken and then endocrine causes. So, for example, even without any cancers or infections, the patient will have a simple hyperthyroidism, which will result in increased bowel motility, fever, increased bowel motility, diarrhea, increased basal metabolic rate, fever, which will present as pyrexia of unknown origin. And then when we tend to do a simple TFT, we will be able to identify the cause. Then periodic fever syndrome should not be ruled out, and suspicious fever. This is common, especially in adolescents. Another important thing you should remember is the importance of travel history. Okay, so the importance of travel history and contact history are non-negotiable in case of pyrexia of unknown origin. Okay, then that's what I said. Detailed history taking is important. Okay. So the one of the reasons for failure of diagnosis could be an improper history. Okay. So an improper history could also be a diagnosis. So we should take a detailed history. Okay. So the fever profile and then associated symptoms like cough, rash, bone pain or weight loss. And even if it, in case of rash, where the rashes are present and which day, in which part of the body they present. These are all gives us a lot of clues. Then exposure history to travels, animals, insect bites, these are also quite common. Then if they are consuming any unpasteurized milk or unsafe water, so these can give to environmental process should not be missed. Okay. Then immunization status. Sometimes we don't even think about vaccine preventable diseases, assuming that the patient will be would have vaccinated, but it's better to ask. And any past history or family history, then social and environmental issues. So this is non-negotiable. In case of general examination, appearance and nutrition, growth parameters, vital signs, skin, the most important things are lymph nodes. Okay. So this is very important. And eye examination, mouth examination, essentially a head to toe examination is to be performed on every single day until we come at a diagnosis. Okay. Then systemic examinations, respiratory, cardiovascular. So this abdomen examination is quite common because this hepatosplenomegaly will give us some clues, and also after confirming this, doing an ultrasound and CT or MRI will help us clinch some diagnosis. And if it is musculoskeletal like arthritis or bone tenderness, concerned the neurological examination has to be done. Okay, that will give clues regarding issues, then meningeal signs and focal deficits has to be looked after. So coming to the investigation, baseline investigation should be mandatory and this should be performed at regular intervals before arriving the diagnosis. And CBC with a smear, ESR, CRP and blood cultures, chest X-ray, LFT, RFT and Mantoux test. So as far as algorithm is concerned, if fever is greater than 2 weeks, first to confirm whether it is fever and it's not some heat stroke or some other illness, do a proper history and examination, baseline investigation. Most of the times, it should be revealing the diagnosis. But if there is no diagnosis, then we should opt for second line test. Still no diagnosis, then we should opt for third advanced test and then specific treatment. So remember, unless the diagnosis achieved, we will not be able to solve the PUO. It is not possible. Okay, only after the diagnosis is achieved, we will be able to solve it. Okay. So concluding, prolonged unexplained fever after basic evaluation is called PUO. differentiate fever with the focus and without focus, then you should be able to tell the causes, infectious causes, autoimmune causes, malignant causes, and miscellaneous causes. Then to approach a stepwise examination, history, and investigation. Okay. So, and any specific treatment. Example, if it is identifies malaria, and you should look out for. So, these things are quite common because sometimes a common infection will come with atypical presentation, and sometimes you will receive atypical diagnosis with a common presentation. So this has to be done. So if you're able to understand this, I believe that you will be able to write an essay comfortably or a short notes if it is asked. So I believe this video is quite useful for you. So thank you.